Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne. This is my video coaching newsletter, and the topic of today's newsletter is going to be she went from hot to cold behavior practically overnight. So, this particular email is from a viewer. He says he's been a long-time watcher, first-time emailer, and so he was hanging out at a sports bar that had a table by himself. He's eating dinner. He sees this woman at the bar having a drink by herself. So he confidently strode over to her and invited her to sit down and hang out with him, which they did for several hours. They exchanged phone numbers. They gave each other a hug and a kiss in the cheek at the end. And he said he'd be in touch. And so this was a Friday night. And so the next day was Valentine's Day. And so even though he's never been on a date, never kissed her, never had hooked up or anything, hasn't even taken her out on a date, even though it was kind of like an instant date, he texts her for Valentine's Day, which any kind of mystery evaporates when you do that. And at the end of the day, it's a scientific fact. Women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. And you'll see, it's like he texted her because he felt guilty that he should do something. So he texts her. She waits a full 24 hours to reply. And then she replies, and then he invites her to meet him for a drink on a Wednesday a few days later. And once again, she doesn't reply, and then it's getting to be like Monday night, and he's like, oh, she's flaking. So he calls her, and he leaves a message, kind of a long, drawn-out message. It's kind of begging for her attention. It's not a very confident message. And she texts back within the hour basically saying she can't make it and, take care, have a nice life, basically. He's going, what the hell? So, it looks like this woman, because he did mention there were a couple dead spots in the conversation where they were sitting there. He wasn't saying anything. She wasn't saying anything. And so it doesn't look like she had super high interest. And so this is one of those kind of situations where her interest is low to mediocre at best. And the better thing to do is to follow what's in the book and stick to the principles, because if you don't do that, because he definitely came off as a little needy because he double texted her. He was impatient, didn't wait for her to get back, and so he calls her, and he doesn't think he came off as being needy or desperate. But if the girl had super high interest, it wouldn't have been a big deal at all. He could have gotten away with it, and they would have gone out on a date. But when you got a woman who's got low to mediocre interest, and you do that, that's usually all that it takes to blow your chances. And you got to pay attention to somebody when you text them and they wait a full 24 hours or longer to reply. It shows they're not really that interested. And you got to pay attention. And it looks like he was really only focused on how much he liked her and was just kind of completely oblivious because he thinks she had super high interest just because she sat down with him. But it was better than sitting at the bar drinking alone. And on top of that, he paid for all of her drinks. So it's just a good email of just to tighten the game up a little bit, because if he'd actually followed what was in the book, he may have ended up on a date with her. But it's pretty clear that her interest wasn't super high, and he way overrated her interest. But it is a good email to go through just because we can kind of fine-tune his approach. So he says, Dear Coach, long-time 3% man reader and YouTube video watcher, first-time emailer. I had an interesting experience with a woman who seemed to pull a Jekyll and Hyde on me. Wondering if you can share some feedback. I was dining alone at a busy sports bar on a Friday night and saw an attractive woman sitting alone at the bar. I got bold, went up to her, and asked if she'd like to join me at my table. She smiled and agreed immediately. There was instant chemistry. She works as a professor of nutrition at a local university where I taught as well before her time. And she talked a lot, about 70 to 80% of the time. She laughed. She smiled a ton. We had some things in common that fed the conversation. There were just a few moments of silence, which I let sit for some space until the conversation resumed. Well, that tells me that they're kind of running out of things to talk about, and they don't have a ton in common. When you really click with somebody, if you run out of things to say, she's going to pick the conversation up. She's just not going to sit there staring at you. So that right there would be pretty obvious that her interest isn't super high and the conversation's not going as well as he thought it was. This is what happens, again, when you only focus on your interest and how much you like her, and you have the attitude of, what can I do to get her to like me? It's just kind of, you can tell he's kind of in the approval-seeking mindset and the vibe. And again, with a woman with real high interest, it's not going to matter. But with a woman with low to mediocre interest like she had, there's just such a small margin for error. And there might, if he's in that kind of a mindset that led to him double texting her and calling her when she didn't reply quick enough, then there's more than likely when he was sitting there hanging out with her, maybe he over communicated his interest. Maybe he was a little dopey. Maybe he was a little too enthusiastic. Because again, if that's his mentality that leads him to double text, even though it's against what the book says, despite the fact he's been following for a while, then there probably were other things that happened during their conversation that he's going to need to clean up in the future. Again, with a woman with super high interest, doesn't matter. But a girl with low to mediocre interest, you can't mess up too much before she's just like, eh. And you'll see in her final response, it's like basically, take care, have a nice life. He says, I also picked up on some subtle flirting. For example, she asked me if I had any tattoos, and I replied that since she's a professor, she might have to launch a research project to find out. That's actually a pretty good line. The night felt like a really good first date. We're both divorced. She's 49 and I'm 57. When we traded numbers, she asked for my last name and she immediately added me to her phone contacts. Great sign. When I paid and picked up her drink tab, she didn't eat, being a vegan. The waitress said, "Have a great Valentine's Day weekend," to us, and the professor smiled broadly, knowing that the waitress could see that I had picked her up and we were having a nice time. When we walked outside, I told her I was glad I had gone out that night. And she said, "Me too." It's kind of like, "Oh, Your Highness, I'm so glad I went out." I wouldn't have said something exactly like that. Because this should have been something you did regardless. You like your own company, and you took yourself out for a drink. It's just kind of overly communicating. Wow, I was just expecting to go to have dinner tonight, and usually I go out and my life sucks, but wow, I met you and my life is so much better now. Again, if a girl had super high interest, not a big deal. But it's always better, as the book says, to underrate her interests. Because remember, it's a scientific fact, women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. And so you got to be a little bit better of a poker player, especially when you're dealing with a woman whose interest is kind of in the place where she is. She opened her arms for a hug and kissed me on the cheek. I returned the kiss and hugged her again and said, "Bye, take care, talk soon." So the next day, Saturday, was Valentine's Day. I felt obligated to do some kind of text acknowledging the holiday and the nice time we had the night before. It's just too much approval-seeking behavior. Again, it's Valentine's Day, so if you're texting her on Valentine's Day, she basically knows you got nothing else going on in your personal life. And with the comment that you made, how you were so glad that you went out the night before, it just, when I read it, it comes off as, wow, nothing like this ever happens to me. I never meet anybody. My life is so boring. But now it's going to be so much better because I met you. It's just too much. You're laying it on a little thick. You're too excited. I texted, "Hi, happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're enjoying the warm weather." She replied about 24 hours later, "Hi, I didn't venture out really yesterday, but I hope to get a walk in today while the sun is out. Thanks again for the drinks on Friday. I hope your weekend's going well." So the important thing to notice is that she was home all day doing nothing. She had his text. She obviously got it. She was being a bum at home, not doing anything. And she purposely just left him hanging for a full 24 hours. She did it on purpose. Why? Because she wasn't that excited to talk to him. You got to pay attention to these things. You can't just gloss over it. But again, when you're only focused on how much you like a girl and your total mindset is, how do I get her to like me? You're just going to miss all these little things and your game is going to get sloppy. And with a girl like this, you just can't be sloppy and overdo it because she's going to bounce on you. He says, I replied about an hour and a half later, "Hi, the drinks were my pleasure. I'm free this coming Wednesday evening if you'd like to have a drink with me." It's just too much, too soon, dude. I would have waited till probably Tuesday, especially if I'd have been sitting there and realized that there were some dead spots in the conversation. I'm not going to text her on Valentine's Day. I'm going to probably text her on Tuesday or Wednesday to see if that helps lift her interest up a little bit. Because remember, it's a scientific fact. Women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. And if Tuesday, Wednesday roll around and she hasn't heard from you, she's going to start to wonder, did he not like me? Did I have bad breath? Did he lose my number? Did he meet somebody else? So, I mean, there's a method to the madness. These things work. And so if you're going to watch videos and you're going to read the book and then you're just going to do the opposite, well, you know, you're potentially going to blow chances. But again, the chances that this would have worked out are marginal at best, I would say. But again, that's why you want to be a better poker player and not reveal too much, because let's look at her actions. What has she done? Like next to nothing. He paid for her drinks. She waited 24 hours to reply. So you got to pay attention to those things. So if she's waiting 24 hours to reply, then I would have just hearted the message and probably would have reached out maybe Thursday of that week just to see if she reached out again. But he was just a little overeager to make a date. And again, a woman that's 47 years old, especially if she's really attractive, she's been around the block a few times and she knows how guys come off that are too overly enthusiastic. So it just, maybe she's had a breakup recently, you just don't know, and she doesn't want to deal with a needy guy that's going to come off and be really clingy. Less really is more. So he says, then a whole day and a half goes by, no reply. By this time it's moving into Monday evening and I could feel her flaking out. So again, he's all up in his head. This is the illusion of action kicking in, as I talk about in the book. So again, dating's like tennis. You hit the ball over the net, and you got to wait for her to hit it back. And he did not do it. He was too impatient. And so that's his problem. He's just too impatient. He's coming off as a little needy, a little desperate. It's just too much too soon for a girl that he just had a simple conversation and a couple drinks with. You know, as the book says, under normal circumstances, you're going to do one date per week. So ideally, probably should have waited till like Thursday, because that was kind of like an instant date. And again, if we look at her actions and her effort, nothing really went anywhere after. It's not like they had a makeout session afterwards. So I would have just let it sit for a while and let her wonder and get to the point where she starts to wonder, is that guy going to call me? Is he going to blow me off? Was he just buzzed? Is that why he asked for my number? Again, it's a scientific fact. Women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. So you should be using that to your advantage, and he clearly didn't do that. So I called and left a voicemail saying, hey, hope your Monday went well. I had a great time with you on Friday. Would love to see you again if you're available Wednesday, 7 p.m. at XX Bar. I figured Wednesday would be a good way to break up a busy week and have an environment for a good conversation, since bars are less busy midweek than on the weekend. He said, let me know, bye. Man, that's a long ass. Oh, so this whole thing was a text. So I want to read that again. That's a really long text. Hey, what's your schedule like? I'd love to see you again this week. Something simple. Hey, I'd love to get together for a drink. What's your schedule like? But he's trying to nail her down on a Wednesday. So he says, hey, hope your Monday went well. I had a great time with you on Friday. Would love to see you again if you're available Wednesday at 7 p.m. at XX Bar. I figured Wednesday would be a good way to break up a busy week and to have an environment for a good conversation, since the bars are less busy midweek than on the weekend. Let me know, bye. Well, she's a professor. Isn't she teaching during the week? Because you saw her on the weekend. So if she's got to get up early and teach class, she's probably not going to want to go out and have drinks and have a hangover the next day. And that's a really long message. And quite frankly, the tone just looks like you're apologizing. It's like you're apologizing for your interest. You're apologizing for bothering her. It's just too much. She texts me back within the hour. Hi, thanks for the invite for Wednesday, but I'm going to pass. I hope you have a good week and take care. I replied, if you change your mind down the road, let me know. Take care. He says, what the fuck, coach? She went from seemingly super interested to flaking out fast. I didn't think my text came across rushed or needy. Yes, they did. I tried to use the idea of simply texting to set up the next date. Maybe there's another guy in the background. But she came across as very into me when we met, so it's leaving me confused. Well, again, because you're only focused on how much you like her, and you're like shocked that this happened. But if we bottom line her actions, she just didn't seem like she was that into you, and you were way, way, way overly enthusiastic towards her. So you gotta, the book says you want to match and mirror her level of interest and effort. And judging by her response that you described in your email, I would have waited till probably Thursday of that week. And then my attitude would have been, well, maybe I'll see her this weekend or maybe the week after. Because especially in the beginning, if her interest is low, just spreading those things out can help get the interest up. So when you finally do go out and have a second date, it may be a week and a half, 2 weeks later, and her interest will be higher because, again, there just wasn't any evidence that she was really that into you. But because you were blinded by your own interest and only focused on how much you liked her, you just were not able to be objective on the situation. And the fact that you were impatient, you tried to set a date really quickly after you had just met and already had a date, it's just too much too soon. And then you're double texting her and calling her and leaving a message. It's a 47-year-old woman has come across guys that have acted needy and overly interested when they first meet. And so that's why she's just basically take care, have a nice life. However, at this point, I'd never call, I'd never text again. You did leave it open. Who knows, maybe 2-3 weeks, a month later, she'll reach back out. But the fact that she took 24 hours to reply, it's, again, you got to pay attention to her actions. Because if you don't pay attention to her actions, if you'd have followed what was in the book, you would have got a better chance of her having a completely different attitude. Again, if the girl started out and had super high interest, she'd been excited to see you, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But as the weeks went by, if you kept behaving that way, what would have happened? You'd probably got 2 or 3 dates, maybe 4 dates, and then your enthusiasm's going through the roof, and her enthusiasm is going down because you're doing too much too soon, and then she would have pulled back on you 3-4 weeks later. And then that would have probably setting you into a tailspin. You would have been double and triple texting and calling and leaving these long drawn out messages. So it's totally unnecessary. You don't need to apologize for your interest. You don't need to apologize for asking her out. And again, the tone of that long text that you sent was just like making excuses for bothering her. So it doesn't come across as very confident. It just comes across as a guy that doesn't have any luck with the ladies. So again, you got to be a better poker player. But, the good news is you rolled the dice, you went for it, you had a nice conversation, even though you kind of fumbled the football on the 1-yard line there. So if you got a question or a challenge and you'd like to get my help, go to understandingrelationships.com, click the coaching tab at the top of your screen on any page of my website, and book a coaching session with yours truly. If you haven't already signed up for our exclusive premium members-only content, in the video description of this video, there are links to join on YouTube, or you can join on Spotify or our website, understandingrelationships.com. Just click the plans tab when you get there, and you can do a 7-day free trial to check out all the great content you get. And if you choose an annual plan, you can get a 25% discount at the end of the 7-day free trial. So go to understandingrelationships.com, click the plans tab, sign up for a free trial today. And until next time, I will talk to you soon.